Here we are, born to be kings, as we, the princes of the universe, are here to talk about a film that can be simultaneously described as one of the worst movies ever, and yet one of the best fucking movies ever fucking made. So grab your katana, or your broadsword, or whatever the hell you want, because we're talking about Highlander this week on Nothing Good.
Man. Sorry, folks. I didn't mean to laugh instantaneously after the intro.
Did you stretch before that? My God.
He just did.
I'm born screaming about this goddamn show.
Listen, today is a really special day. It's not just because we're talking about Highlander. Today is really special because the four of us are in the same place at the same time talking about the exact same thing. No virtual, no Zoom, no Google Meets, none of that.
None of it.
This is the first time, though. The four of us are in the same place at the same time to record. It's been combinations.
Pockets.
But yeah.
It took over 40 episodes to get here.
But I'm really excited to be here with you guys and talk about one of my... I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite movies, but it's a guilty pleasure movie of mine.
Oh, for sure.
And revisiting it has reaffirmed that.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, how you guys doing? Mac, let's start with you. I know you've been a little rough lately.
Well, guys, it's been a rough 3 months at the McDonald household.
Yeah.
At Clan McDonald, right? So I during this past week, everybody, I came down with the stomach flu. So I've officially checked off every box this winter.
You've gotten every major illness.
I've gotten every major one, right? The herpes cleared right up, and
that's good.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, we're all relieved on that one. But yeah, so was able to eat like a regular lunch today.
Nice.
So got some scrambled eggs, some toast, some fruit.
You're describing breakfast, though.
Yeah, it's more of a brunch. When I ordered it was breakfast time. But when I picked it up and ate it, it was lunchtime. So, but yeah, so trying to keep it light for the stomach. I will say it is not the most. It's not the best way to lose weight, but it's damn efficient. So, but yeah, feeling a lot better here today. It's good to kind of be outside again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you're back at it.
Thanks, man. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Welcome back. It is super cool to actually be here, and it's weird to make eye contact with everybody.
To look around.
Yeah, I feel like because looking at the notes, and it's really easy to get you're paying attention when we're doing this virtually, but we're all full on distracted. I have a computer screen in front of you, and my notes are there, and then supplementary. As somebody mentions a random cereal, I'm Googling it so I can pull it up and look at it. Oh yeah. But we're here in person doing this thing.
As they say in Highlander, this is the gathering.
This is the gathering.
There's only a few of us left now.
It's exciting that we're back at it.
There's gonna be
live and in person.
There's going to be a little bit more turning of the head than I was used to before. It was just shifting of eyes before.
You got spoiled just being able to sit back and kind of space out as somebody babbled.
I'm still waiting at some point for my dog to kind of burst through Jeff's garage door and just come in.
It's possible. I'm sure I could probably end up yelling "fuck" loud enough to where my wife will still text me and be like, "What are you doing? We have a toddler. Quit yelling that. Did you really need to yell horse semen that loud?"
Yes.
Yeah.
It's for effect. It's for dramatic effect.
Why do you think Denmark's listening so much?
Yeah, way to go. And France, too. I just want to say real fast, before we get into our normal thing, I just wanted to say hello to our new and old listeners. Hello to our wonderful European, but specifically to the French that have been joining us in droves. I have to once again say, it's good to have you back.
It's always good to have them back.
It is.
So what are you guys drinking this fine day for this episode?
I'll start off because it's courtesy. Doc, so inside baseball, I brought the audio equipment for today's recording, but I forgot to bring beer. And so, thankfully, Doc covered me on this one. And I'm drinking a Belhaven Brewery Scottish Ale. Because I'm talking about the Highlander.
That's right.
It's rich, nutty, and smooth, like all of us. And it's good. It's really good. It's got a good body on it. 5.2%. comes in 11.2 fluid ounces here in the United States. Or for our French listeners, 330 milliliters.
I thought you were going to say 350 ha-has.
Really?
You know what? If we ever cover something from France that's even more French than Christopher Lambier, which we'll cover in here in a minute, I will do what I did with the Clerks intro, but instead of counting dicks, I'll just I can get it going. It's like, it feels natural, but it's good.
Ronan's in France, isn't it? Isn't that like most of that movie in France?
Oh yeah, the De Niro movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can possibly put Ronan on the list, or maybe the Professional. You know, and then you can just to your heart's content.
So good. And France will turn off in droves. How about you, Jafar? What do you have?
I am drinking a beer courtesy of Jones from the UK. It's Eagle Brewing Banana Bread beer, and for a beer that is designed to taste like banana bread, it hits the nail on the head.
I was told at the store that this was like the jam, and I said, I'm picking it
Can I get a
up.
whiff of
I have
like bananas.
It does. It's
I have
yeasty.
had that beer, and it is quite good. I just kind of randomly grabbed it at the 6-pack store.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, banana bread, I'll bite. Very, very impressed with actually how much I liked it.
Good
Yeah.
stuff. Doc, what are you drinking?
I am, and just kind of like, I went to the store and I said to the guy, I said, well, look, I'm recording a show. I need some themed beers. Point me in the right direction of the Scottish ales and the British ales. And he pointed this one as the first one he said before he mentioned the one that you're drinking, Noah. It is the Orkney Brewery Skull Splitter, and this is me tipping my hat to the Kurgans, even though they're technically from the steppes, but whatever.
Right.
This is it says 5,000 years in the making. There's a name of a town I can't pronounce. I'm not going to try to, so I'll ruin it. It's 8.5% alcohol,
Nice.
and it is really fucking good. I'm really enjoying it.
Matt.
Skull Splitter.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Splitting
Mac, what are you drinking?
Well, gentlemen, I am drinking a 16.9 fluid ounce, 500 milliliter bottle of essential everyday natural spring water.
Nice.
Yes.
Heavy shit.
It is. It's crisp. It's refreshing. It's restaurant quality.
Restaurant quality.
It is. It's
But
restaurant
are we
quality.
talking about
So
Red Lobster quality, or are we talking like, somewhere in Mount Washington quality?
no, we're Cheddar Bay biscuits.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Full-on Cheddar Bay biscuits.
Full on Cheddar Bay biscuits there.
Which are responsibly sourced, by the way.
They are.
You don't want to deplete all the biscuits in cheddar.
No,
Bay.
you can't. You have to make sure there's some for future generations. My stomach is nowhere close to being at a point that I should be drinking anything, so this is going to hit the spot for
It's good
today.
to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
It's good to stay hydrated. So, Highlander, 1986, released March 7th, 1986.
No way.
So I was 3 years old when this movie came out.
Beautiful.
I couldn't tell you what age I was exactly when I saw it for the first time, but it was like in the preteen stage of my life. It was like, maybe my dad rented it on VHS. I'm not 100% sure, but it changed me. And I'm gonna spoiler alert this shit. Anybody who knows me well, really well, knows my affinity towards blades, towards swords, towards ornamental knives and decorative knives. It is actually from this movie.
Yep.
That's the impact this movie
That's
has
where
had
it
on me.
started.
Is just the swordplay and like the katana and it's just like my obsession with the idea of like having a badass blade. Whether it's in a cane or it's a scorpion dagger.
Yeah.
Throwing knives. It's honestly all from Highlander. And it's just really cool.
Highlander's one of those things that you don't realize how much it influences you, and your young adult into full-on adultness until you go back and watch it like we did. And you're like, oh shit, that's where I got that from. That's where I got that affinity from. Yeah, no, I actually remember the first time I ever saw Highlander. So I was less than a year old when this movie came out, but I can tell it immediately changed my life. Because I mean it's about swords and titties and lightning and all that other stuff. So, but spoiler alert too, way less titties than I remember there being.
Considerably
Way
less.
less titties.
I remember there being more titties in this movie.
But see, for the age that we were when we watched it for the
plenty-
first time,
any
that
tit.
was so much titty.
So I saw this. I rented this because I wanted to see Highlander 3 when it came out with Mario Van Peebles, right? Because that was, and I distinctly remember seeing the trailers for this movie and wanted to see it. And I'm like, it's Highlander 3, and I didn't care to see the original. It wasn't important to me. It looked cool. And my dad's like, you got to see the first one. The first one's awesome. And I'm like, okay. So I was 8 years old and watched Highlander. in my grandparents' house because they weren't home. And, oh, fuck yes. Yes. And still to this day, it is a wonderfully awful cinematic masterpiece. Yeah.
That is probably the best way to describe the 108 minutes that I got to spend rewatching this movie in my adulthood.
Yeah, it's an experience. I was 5 when the movie came out. I don't remember seeing it as a kid. I think I was a teenager when I saw it the first time, and I think we just randomly caught it on TV, so there were no titties in that particular version.
You didn't see the true Highlander.
I don't think it was
More like
until I was a young adult that I
Very much a Midlander.
saw the titty version of Highlander. Not great, but not terrible.
Listen, before we get to you, Mac, I just want to point out, we keep calling this movie bad, but man, the sequel reaches the levels.
That was
yeah.
I want to cover that at the end. All right, I want to save all talk about Highlander, specifically
the quickening
Highlander 2 and 4. All right, I want to save thoughts about those to the end because I watched this tonight. Not tonight, but when we watched this with my wife, who had never seen it before, and you watched it, right?
Yeah.
Did you watch it with Stephanie?
No.
Okay, so you watched it by yourself.
I did watch it by myself.
And did you watch it by yourself?
No, my wife was with me, although she was. After she got done heckling the movie for the first 30 minutes, then she completely tuned out. Doing something else.
So I watched this, and when we get to the end, I want to talk to you about me trying to describe. I said, I'm going to give you 2 premises to the sequel of this movie, and you have to guess which one is the actual premise to the Highlander sequel. And she thought I was lying to her. She thought I was lying to her until I showed her the preview, the trailer for Highlander 2. But yes, so it is, though, you can't take it away, that it is not a great movie, like, technically. It's like saying Hulk Hogan was not a great technical wrestler, right?
Right.
But it doesn't matter because when he wanted to back in the day, he could get fucking over and be awesome, right?
Right.
Same thing about the Highlander, despite the fact that it is in so many ways terrible. It is in that many ways fucking incredible, and I will not let someone disrespect the good goddamn name of Highlander.
That's
okay?
right.
Agreed.
No.
So, Mac, where were you at on this?
So I was this was definitely a movie I watched with my older brother. And I was probably, I think the first time I saw it, I was around probably 8 or 9. And I think the last time that I saw it before the rewatch was probably around, and I'm going to kind of tip my hat forward a little bit to one of our upcoming episodes, the GoldenEye era, when my buddies and I in middle school and early high school would get together and have like just GoldenEye nights where we just sit there and play games all night long. And then we'd occasionally toss a movie in there. And I think the last time I saw this before watching it again as an adult was when I was probably, I want to say like 14 or 15. So I had a whole lot of feelings watching it again today.
Taking you back.
And I did. I remember it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do.
Definitely.
I do.
It's like your brain, I say this, it's like puts certain parts of this movie on a pedestal. You know what I mean? Like that, and they still can't be touched, but maybe that pedestal is a little bit more aged and cracked. And it's for some reason wearing a trench coat over a leather jacket with the bluest blue jeans and perfect white sneakers at the same time.
It's like
so
the
80s.
old man New Balance white shoes.
I marked so hard for the old man New Balance shoes when I saw them. My theory about Highlander and why it's changed for me is this. From the time that Highlander came out, and when I watched it several times to now, something came out in between called Braveheart. Yeah. And that changed a lot of shit for the Scottish Highland movie, right? So as I'm watching some of the things, I'm like, oh, yeah, so Braveheart that's the guy from Braveheart. He's actually in Braveheart. You know, so there's a lot of those little things that kind of pop up there, and I was like, oh, that's probably why I think this movie differently than
Braveheart did it way better.
Braveheart did it so much better.
I mean, here's the thing about the comparison: is that there are only 2 actually Scottish people in this movie about a Scottish person. And only one of them plays a Scottish person.
I could not believe that.
Yeah, and that's the one guy that's in Braveheart as well. So it's a good crossover.
I had forgotten that part of the movie, and I actually thought it was a joke. Like I thought he was going to pull the hat off and everything, and he was like, just kidding, ha ha ha. And no, he just fucking went for it.
So hard. But speaking of so hard,
speaking of so hard.
And it's a weird transition. I'm gonna try to make it make sense.
Yeah.
So
Wait,
the movie,
how hard?
Real hard.
So hard,
man.
Like, I gotta put a Pittsburgh accent, like, real hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
As you keep, so I want to point out here too, just real quick. Noah has used at least 4 different accents since we started recording this podcast, and that is still 7 different accents less than Christopher Lambert uses in this fucking movie.
my God.
All right, if we're just gonna get to it, I gotta say it. So I have this in my notes. One of the only things that I kept trying to tell my wife about this movie. She's like, "Do I have to watch this with you?" I'm like, "Yes." I don't ever make you watch any of the fucking wrestling shows that we review, or listen to the albums that we review, or play any of the video games that we review. But this movie you need to fucking watch. A, because you've never seen it and you need to live. Like, you need to dial it up. But 2, because if I told you that there's a movie that you have a Frenchman who plays a Scotsman with an undefinable accent, and then he's joined in this movie by an actual Scotsman who's playing an Egyptian, pretending to be a Spaniard while still doing the Scottish accent, you would think I'm fucking lying to you. But it's not. It's true. But you watch it and you're like, oh, that is ridiculous. And you're watching it and you're like, Ramirez, though. It's Highlander. I'm from Egypt. It's like the fuck you are,
liar.
Sean.
He looks
You
like
lying piece of shit.
He looks like he's coming off the HMS fucking Pinafore.
Yeah, I swear to God. So good. So good.
Yeah,
So,
his accent was Lambert, whatever. Lambert. His accent was fucking all over the place, but that's because he didn't speak much English.
no.
You know,
No,
so
really?
that's why. Because previously he was in Tarzan, which I had seen Tarzan on Encore. I'm dating myself here a little bit. Back in the day,
Encore
when
is
Encore was an
incredible.
actual thing. You know, they just played no movies and no TV shows. But Tarzan, I think it was The Legend Begins. I think is what it was.
An 80s Tarzan.
Did you ever? Even you guys ever see it?
No.
I probably
Pretty
have.
good, actually.
I probably have.
For what it
actually.
was, he played fucking Tarzan. It was like a not brutal, but it was a bit more serious tone. It wasn't a comedy.
Was he wearing a trench coat?
No, he was very almost naked. Yeah, but I'd seen him in that movie before I'd seen Highlander.
Okay. So that was your first exposure to
Yeah,
that
it's
movie.
weird.
Yeah.
But doing some research on this movie, he didn't speak much in Tarzan because he didn't speak English, and he had to learn English really fast for Highlander.
Yeah,
That's
he
the
was,
thing.
for months leading up to filming, he was doing 8-hour training days. The first 4 hours were the dialect coach, so he could learn the language, and then the second 4 hours every day was sword fighting.
Yep.
Wow.
That's why his lines felt so odd because he just didn't speak
couldn't.
English.
He
Yeah.
wasn't sure what he was saying. He was just saying
I'll
it.
give that man his flowers. Like, he did really well considering he had to learn a really difficult language.
Yeah, and I would even go say is that of all the things that you could say are technically wrong with this movie, I don't think Lambier's in it on that list. I think for being the main lead in a low budget 80s action movie about immortal sword fighting, which I'll make the note for reasons. Right, is the official storyline
really
reasons
was,
we get, at least in this movie.
Oh.
He didn't do a bad job. I think he and the main lady did not do a bad job in this movie whatsoever.
He's really good at being creepy.
Yeah, it's weird,
But
crazy.
let's do a real quick plot synopsis then, right?
Yeah.
So, like, anybody who's never seen this movie, how dare you even listen to this? But whatever.
Fuck you. We're in person. We're in person.
Yeah, we are. Oh boy.
Jeff, wear a bib. It's going to
Hi,
get wet
Internet.
over there.
It's been a long time. I want to first apologize for not calling. Things have been busy, and I just don't like you. And so I just want to be of the first of many to say welcome back. And for anyone that's listening to our show, actually, no. To anyone who's ever existed, alive or dead, on the planet Earth, that has never taken the time to watch the goddamn Highlander. All I want to say is, fuck you.
All right.
It felt good. It felt like it's like
It felt good for us.
Yeah, it brings it back.
Glad we got
was,
that out of the way.
Good for you.
The first fuck you I ever got from Noah on this podcast,
One of many.
he actually got up from his chair and went 22 feet across the room and did a sprint power slide into the fuck you. That's how I got indoctrinated into that.
Sometimes you need a running start.
Sometimes you need a running start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. Yeah. So plot synopsis.
Man,
Was there one?
Feel free to help me out with this because there's a lot going on in this movie. For being very linear of a story, there's a lot happening.
It is.
With flashbacks, but
They took some risks with how they told the flashbacks.
which I dig. I dig that. Connor MacLeod from the Clan MacLeod from like 1536 Scotland.
Early 1500s.
He's murdered by Kurgan, but not really murdered because he doesn't die. He should have died. His townsfolk think that he's of the devil. They kick him out. And the movie takes place basically in 1985, New York City. So in this world, there are immortals who've been wandering around the human race forever, apparently, for, like you said, reasons.
Yeah. That's it. That's what we get, folks.
Whatever that means.
We don't know how many there are or why they're there.
At one point, he's like,
reasons.
He's with Sean Connery and Lamb. He's like, but why do we exist? And Sean Connery's like, because fuck you. That's why. I don't know. Why does the sun come up?
Why are there stars in the sky? Why does that was the part of the movie that I was just like, oh, fine. I can fucking remember why this whole shit's happening. And they're like, no, you don't. They just went, fuck you.
We'll cover it in the second movie, and you're going to be real mad about it.
So the movie takes place. The gathering's happening in New York City because, of course, it is. And there's a couple of fights. People lose their heads. In the end, the guy who, the big bad Kurgan, he comes, fights Highlander. Highlander takes his head, and in a strange turn of events, Highlander becomes mortal and can read people's thoughts, and he will
manipulate them.
Cure world issues.
When you're talking about plot synopsis, you went right straight for the.
Listen, we can talk about that. We'll get there.
Okay, well, I mean, we gotta be real. The movie opens up with a fucking wrestling show at Madison Square Garden.
I wanted to get the synopsis out of the way so we can get to that.
But for some reason, it gets brought. Like they keep coming back to it, at least in emotionally for me. But you always got to put in Sean Connery is his mentor,
right?
Tells him how to be the Highlander, not a Highlander, but Connor MacLeod, and then he dies. And then we get to meet other immortal that he's friends with, whose name escapes me, and then he immediately dies. So it's like, and there's a cop lady who...
Castigar.
Yeah, Castigar, yes. And then there's the cop lady that he eventually chews on the nipple of, that is... Multiple times. Interested in his sword.
Look, we all have our kinks.
No, she was all right.
Yeah.
We all have our kinks.
So there's a love story in there, too. It's basically it is.
Yeah.
And then they're all after the prize, which is... Here's the thing, and I'm just going to jump in here for a second. We're told that the Kurgan can't have the prize. That
it will end the world.
It'll end the world. The mortal men will suffer if the Kurgan has the prize. It's like, what does the prize end up being? You can hear what people are thinking,
and you're going to die.
Where was the downside to that? It's probably a lot easier for people to let him win like a long time ago.
Yeah. But the wrestling show. So I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Oh, I do know about you.
Yeah.
Of course I do.
You do.
Hi,
I'm Noah.
You're a WWF kid.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Much like me, much like Jeff, I'm sure. Much like Mac, you're not a NWA kid. You're not a Jim Crockett kid. You're not a JCP kid.
No WCCW.
No WCCW.
No World Class.
No FCW. None of that. So it's funny to me now looking back at it. When I was a kid, like being a big wrestling fan, seeing a wrestling show at the beginning of the movie, even if it was only for like 2.5 minutes, I knew who Jim Brunzell was.
Yeah.
I knew who the Tonga Kid was, but I didn't know the other guys because I didn't watch, Texas wrestling. I didn't know the Freebirds. I didn't know Bad Street. And it's weird to look back and go, they were fucking... What promotion was that?
It was WWF. Because it was the
guard. Were they ever?
I thought in the credits they said it was AWA.
No, so they used AWA wrestlers.
Okay.
Right? But it was being in that it was in the Garden in 1995.
It had to have been WWF. Yeah.
If you don't believe that I did more research into why those wrestlers were in the beginning of than I did for the entire fucking making of this movie.
I didn't do any research because I knew you were going to do all the research.
Yes. So long story.
I let the first 5 minutes of the movie go just for you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So one of the and here's a fun thing. It's like 6 degrees to the Iron motherfucking Sheik. Because one of the people that they had do the stunt work in the foreign shot scenes, which were, I can't remember where exactly besides Scotland they were shot, somewhere else they were, knows the Iron Sheik from the Team USA Olympic, in which Iron Sheik referred them to Vern Gagne. So when they needed wrestlers, Vern Gagne wanted Greg Gagne to be the star of that. Of course he did. And one of the producers went to AWA to check out their show and somebody told the fucking carny that he is Michael Hayes, that's guys over there from Hollywood. So Michael Hayes went over and just do all over.
Let me tell you what we gonna do.
And by the time that the guy in Vern Gagne, Michael Hayes wouldn't let him go talk to Vern Gagne. By the time Vern Gagne, he didn't care about Greg. Because if you're talking to the Fabulous Freebirds and you're like, I need flamboyant professional wrestlers, there you go. Racist flamboyant professional wrestlers.
Yeah.
But flamboyant. And then you have Greg Gagne, who is basically the wrestling equivalent of Greg Brady. Right? Like it's like vanilla ice cream as a person. It's actually like shitty vanilla ice cream. Because what you want, it's not going to be as good. And if the vanilla ice cream holds a grudge against you because it's not as good. That's Greg Gagne.
It's been open in the freezer for a little while. It's got a little freezer burn on there and everything.
And it's old.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And it's just waiting for Vince McMahon to die.
Yeah.
Basically, that vanilla ice cream. So by the time they got the producer had already made up his mind. So they got the Freebirds, and then they wanted somebody more diverse because they realized they got basically, NASCAR and wrestling form with the Freebirds. So they grabbed Tonga Kid.
Can never go wrong with
Can't go wrong with Tonga. Who would actually be in a wrestling movie the next year after this with Roddy Piper called Body Slam. But and that's how he got discovered for that role in that movie, which is fun. But Jim Brunzell was the one they sent to keep the Freebirds from doing too much cocaine on the set of Highlander.
I love it.
I mean, it's the 80s in New York. If there wasn't cocaine on set, I kind of would feel a little bit...
for sure.
I mean, half of what Connor McLeod was wearing in New York made me think that he was dealing cocaine instead of antiques.
That's the other thing that made them trust
When you open
It's
up the
all
urn of this, 600 BC silver chalice that he has from, Indonesia, it's fucking cocaine.
It's all cocaine.
It's all cocaine.
It's all cocaine. Oh, my God. But wrestling opens up the show.
Yeah, it was really cool. And my wife... it's hard to read my wife when it comes to these sorts of movies because there's a part of her that loves me dearly and is in love with me and
Part of her.
there's that part and she'll put up with my bullshit.
She entertains
because
it.
she loves me so much. And so when I go, I'm going to watch this movie for the show, she usually goes, oh, cool. What are you going to watch? Can I watch it with you? I'm like, of course you can. I want to get an outside perspective anyhow. And the first thing she says, we're watching the intro, and she goes, of course there's fucking wrestling in it.
I forgot there was wrestling in it.
But you know what's funny, Jones? When I saw that, that's the first thing I thought. Is of course there's fucking wrestling in this.
Of course there is.
That was the first thing I thought because I completely forgot how it opened. I didn't forget because again, when we're talking about the start of this movie, guys, something extremely important that we didn't mention is fucking Queen. Doing the soundtrack of this movie, and it fucking slaps you.
It's
right on
so
the
good.
first frame.
Whenever the movie starts to let you down, Freddie Mercury shows up and lifts you right back up. You're like, oh shit!
Here we are.
That song's so good.
Born to be
Yeah.
God. It's just. And that brought me back to this movie's fucking awesome. And then the first 10 minutes, no, it's not.
But the music, the song,
but the music,
the soundtrack's just good.
Yeah, the soundtrack's fucking excellent.
I'm going to bring it up here while we talk here for a second, and I'm going to read it. I should have been more prepared, but this movie we have to even go back a little bit further than that to the intro of this movie, and I don't want to hark on every detail of this film, but before the wrestling. And before the Queen,
I know where this is going,
is the fucking title card that comes up with the worst fucking formatted text in the history.
You can't read it.
You can't. No, you can't. And it's
on
the weird
VHS, you couldn't read that
sentences, right?
shit.
No, and it's such a weird. Where they put the period and where they start the line. You should always, when in film, in video, write something as if someone's going to read it out loud, and that a line break is a break. That's it, right? Also, when you start, it's on Peacock, by the way, everybody. And when you start it with a new intro, and then it just keeps getting more 80s as the movie starts to go.
That canon reminds me of RoboCop.
Yeah, there's it does remind me of RoboCop.
Oh, yeah.
It's the logo, and then you can start to see the light start to fade. And when I'm the titles are just dark red.
Yeah,
all right,
red on black is not easy to read it.
What I'm going to do here is read this opening title from Highlander the way that it's written.
Are you going to do it in your Scottish brogue?
I am going to do it in a terrible Sean Connery accent.
Excellent.
Your mother, Turbeck. Okay, here we go. That was almost. I can't do Connery without thinking of Hunt for Red October. So it's which is him trying to do a shitty Russian accent. So it gets real murky. So here we go. From the dawn of time, we came moving silently down through the centuries, living many secret lives, struggling to reach the time of the gathering. When the few who remain will battle to the last. No one has ever known we were among you until
I like it.
now. Like it's
My
like
dog does not like your show.
no.
That could not have been any better.
I
was well
agree,
timed.
Clover. I agree. But it's like and you're like, what the fuck? And then Queen immediately hits, and you're like, all right, I don't care. I don't care about the text.
Yeah, and you
bullshit.
forget about it.
Queen autocorrects
Yes.
immediately at that point.
It's a banging soundtrack. There's 4 songs on this soundtrack, but it's a banging soundtrack.
And the weird thing is, so it's not even a soundtrack. So they reference it in the credits, the soundtrack by Queen. The soundtrack never came out. It was never released.
Right.
Unreal.
That is
Like, how do you fucking drop that one?
I don't know. 1986. You remember to pay the Fabulous Freebirds, but you can't give you this fucking song. And Who Wants to Live Forever on a vinyl?
So in this movie, I think and I didn't count, but I'm just gonna off the top of my head say that Connor has 3 like combat sequences. The very beginning against the Frenchman.
And you're talking about as a traditional sword fight.
Which I want to just skim over that fight because I remember my wife just kept scoffing at it. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, he's backflipping away from him. I know.
Oh, that's the greatest thing. That's the greatest part of this fucking
I know he is.
He just keeps going. Some say he's still backflipping.
But yeah, I mean, but we are introduced to like the power of the quickening, which is effectively like intergalactic busting a nut.
Yep.
The best was it had to have been in that scene. I think I wrote it down. Hold on.
Is it when the cars like actually defecate after?
Dude, I wrote the car just shit itself.
Car just really shit itself.
I paused so quick. I said,
Yeah.
the car just shit itself.
I actually had to go back and rewatch that whole sequence
'Cause it
just
did.
to wrap my head around again what I saw. But yeah, the car did in fact shit all over itself.
Like they did that clearly on purpose that the car shit itself because the quickening is that intense.
But why was Connor McLeod wearing dad shoes? And this is the other question I wanted to point to you guys here as we're talking about the start of the movie, because they go right in on the dad shoes.
Right. It's like the second thing we see.
Yeah.
And he's been around for hundreds of years. He could have picked anything he wanted.
He really could have. Were dad shoes a thing in 1986?
No, here's the thing.
Those were in style.
Those were just shoes.
Okay.
But our dads were like,
Those were the shoes that
Fuck
the
that
dads
shit
were
right
wearing
there.
in 1986.
I'm wearing
and they
those
just
for the rest
kept
of my
that going.
Yeah.
I was weirdly confused by a lot of the motivation of the start of the movie because so we're in a wrestling ring, right? And it's wrestling, cool. I enjoy it. I realized later on, because there are a couple of times they answer things later on in the movie that they should have probably explained earlier.
yeah.
But he's watching wrestling because he's Scottish and Scotsmen wrestle. Okay, cool, probably.
Cool.
But he just decides to get up and leave.
Right.
He's having PTSD from watching the Fabulous Freebirds.
The violence of I always assumed it was because he sensed Basile was nearby. Because immortals can sense each other. So I feel like he knew, like, he just kind of like, all right, it's time
That's
to fucking
way
go
too
down.
smart of an answer.
Well, but they do, though.
But
but then later in the movie, I'm sorry to jump on you, but later in the movie, he's like watching lions randomly not fuck after having just chewed on that chick's nipple.
Yeah.
And the Kurgan is literally behind him.
He notices it after the fact.
But he's like talking to her. He doesn't like perk up when she's in danger. No. So I don't know.
But according to canon, they do.
They do.
So that's kind of what I just assumed.
But the canon wasn't created until like 2 movies later.
No, the canon was in the movie. Like, they can sense each other.
They did it in Act 2.
Yeah. But that was only really Sean Connery sensing that Kurgan was nearby. I think that was the only time it was really clearly.
Well, he said that you know how when you showed me you felt sick, and he's like,
that was because of Kurgan.
That's like we can sense each other.
Yeah,
Like,
they definitely can sense each other. I also think, but it's a combination of he could sense something wasn't right, but I think it was the PTSD. I think the violence of the match was causing an issue.
I thought it was just like the overall vibe of New York screaming into his ear during the match.
Oh, man,
He
it's
just
so
felt like he
good.
had to
That dude was
get
going
up
to
and
get
leave.
punched in the face.
Dude, all the time I'm like, if I'm at a wrestling show and that fucking Mark is like screaming in my face, I'm like, dude, Jesus.
But how bad is your security? that you're going to let a dude walk in with a full fucking katana.
These were the 80s. It was a different time.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, Freddie Blassie got stabbed like 8 times in Madison Square Garden, so I'm not really surprised that you can carry a whole samurai sword. They probably saw a guy with a trench coat. They're like, here we come. Open it up. There's a samurai sword. Security is like, look, sees that he's white, and he's like, keep moving forward.
Oh
You're
my
okay.
God.
You're fine. You know, it's one of those terrible, terrible things. But yeah, then you have like, what I don't get about the sword fighting scenes in this movie, that mostly Christopher Lambier's sword fighting scenes, is that he's always like trying to play this reluctant hero. You know, like I don't want to be immortal. I don't really want to fight. I'm going to, like, he tries to negotiate with the weird flippy old dude who looks, by the way, did anyone else think for a second that he's just someone's limo driver? Like he looked like a chauffeur.
He was absolutely a butler for somebody at this point.
100%.
Like, he's this random guy that runs out in the middle of a lethal weapon and gets blown away in like 8 times.
Yeah.
I would agree that the general story, what you're saying about Connor and his motivations and his reluctancy, very little is really truly established for him. I am more interested. I want to watch a HBO Max series about Ramirez's adventures. That's what I want to watch.
That would have been great.
Honestly, I would be more interested in like the dynamic between Connor and Rachel, which I totally forgot about that dynamic.
Oh yeah, until it's there.
It was like super interesting to me.
Yeah.
I don't remember the scene where he rescues her as a little girl. And I'm like, what? Does this actually happen?
Yeah.
And it's really cool that that's her father figure, basically. That's really wild to me. Like, that's a story I'd watch.
Yeah, she's
that's
the only one who knows that he's immortal.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's very on the fence about. He's wishy-washy. He's
Yeah.
flaky.
But he's like, there's going to be only a few of us left, and you're going to have to fight them all. And he's like, but do I, though? And Sean Connery's like, yeah. So it's like, but he does, yeah, so it's weird mixed signals about that reluctant hero-ness. And I know it's on account of the bloodthirsty nature of the Kurgan.
Right.
It's like shit or get off the pot and that. And he's also, and I don't want to be mean to him, but he's also not very good at sword fighting. Like, hundreds of years later, he's still not. He's like, old chauffeur dude beats his ass.
But listen, when you watch when they do the first flashback and you watch the first battle that they show with him in, and you see how he gets fucking owned, like with one move,
He's done.
he just goes, "I'm gonna get you," and the Kurgan's like, stab. Like, it's definitely an improvement.
Why
Like,
won't nobody fight me? Like,
Yeah.
Here's another little, which you probably already may or may not know. So Christopher Lambert suffers from some sort of, like, I won't say it's degenerative, but he has an eye issue he's had his entire life, and he's effectively blind without his glasses. So his swordplay is like a product, I think, of that. Him not killing somebody or hurting himself. But yeah, he's very blind without his glasses.
Did we cover that in the Mortal Kombat episode?
We might have.
I don't even remember that.
I don't think we did. We were too busy giving out.
Well,
about
that might also
Talking about
explain why
bad
Raiden
titties.
didn't do anything in the fucking movie.
fucking nose back titties. Right. Fucking nose back titties.
But yeah, that's why I think that's a big portion why the choreography was a little loose, because he just couldn't see what he was doing.
You know, so there's something to say about that, because this movie, like, technically speaking, is a whole lot of shit.
Yeah.
There are some times where the cinematography is fucking Lord of the Rings, like, beautiful. Especially when they're shooting a lot of stuff in the Scottish Highlands. And then there are other points where you're like, I don't know what the fuck you're trying to do with this camera move or this camera angle or what you're trying to do. So you obviously had somebody who knew what they were doing and somebody who obviously didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
And kind of going at it at the same time. If you got a guy who isn't going to be a great sword fighter who's your lead, why don't you just try to hide that with some clever camera moves or camera positions, or maybe do some, like, wide shots where you can put the stunt double in there to maybe take away, just like they did in Iron Fist, where, you know, Finn Jones didn't fucking do any of those fight scenes. They just had somebody else do it. But, like, why don't you do something like that to try to maybe hide where there are some deficiencies there, or maybe they just didn't have the budget to do that. I don't know. But, like, that's what I thought. Like, because I agree. I thought, especially the first, I thought it really did pretty well at the end with that final fight.
Oh, that
scene.
final fight scene was badass.
It's
too.
badass.
Yeah, with the you could tell they figured out what they were doing in the movie.
Yeah,
because that thing goes, and you're like, oh man, if you had just basically started the movie with this kind of energy, we'd be on a different wavelength. Yeah.
But I'm just surprised they didn't try to do anything to maybe just try to hide that a little bit, because especially in the 80s too, nobody was really thinking people were doing their own stunts or anything. Stunt guys were doing all sorts of bullshit.
Cared about it.
Nobody cared. So why didn't they just try to do that?
It may have been an inexperience. So the director, Russell
Malak?
whatever you say his fucking
Yeah,
last
that
name. This was only his second feature film. Before that, he had done a decade's worth of music videos. AC/DC, Elton John.
It shows.
Duran. Like, that was, like, he was the guy for those 80s style videos. So he was sort of thrown into this. And it's weird that Highlander is even a thing. So the script, the guy who wrote it in grad school for a film project. And his teacher said, "This is really good. You should call an agent and see if someone will buy it, if a studio will buy it." And they bought it right up. $200,000 is what he got.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the first
And they're
draft.
like, "Yeah, we're gonna tweak it a little bit, but we're gonna make a movie out of it." But I think, this first fight scene is sort of, it's sloppy. The choreography is sloppy. The practical effects are just ridiculous. Like, it's so bad.
Why does
like,
some
if my sword hits a hood of a car, like, there's not going to be sparks and explosions.
Okay, stop it. I fucking love the fact that the swords randomly spark. Like, it is so 80s. It's like,
It's absurd.
I want you to lean into the absurdity, right? When the movie leans in to the absurdity, the Kurgan just basically being dialed up to 10.
Dismantling a castle
Yes,
with, like,
right.
lights.
So ridiculous.
When it throws the old man out, the old lady's on the hood of the car, and like Clancy Brown is just like, he's like, I don't give a shit. I'm going to be like every prototypical villain, and you dial it up to 12. When the movie leans into the absurd, it knows what it is, and it then you can't make fun of it. You're like, oh yeah, you know what you are. It's the trying to be more than it is, sensual. For some strange reason, they used like the cheapest film possible for one scene.
Oh my God.
The pan out of his eye.
Oh my
right?
God.
I went blind for about 3 minutes after
Yeah,
that.
for sure. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? I'm like, I'm watching a 4K remaster of fucking Highlander. And I gotta deal with this not aging
For like
well.
16 seconds you worked.
Yeah, and like here it is in the most 80s apartment, which not to reference, I try not to date where we are for the French listeners, first of all, who fucking love Christopher Lambert, but two, have never been to the Century 3 Mall in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the 90s. But dear God, his apartment is like Century 3 Mall in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in the 90s. And then you got that fucking room with the couches, and they just have this knack for never shooting that room more than like a quarter or top down.
Yeah,
It was top down.
It's top down, and they're trying to be artsy with this.
it's a
I'm like,
cool
no,
angle, but-
just pull out a pair of tits and fight with some swords and have it spark randomly.
Wait, are the tits Holton swords?
Why not? Jesus, there you go. That should have been Highlander too. Like he's like, oh, and then like the red net around the world, and then it's just tits with swords. Way better than the concept otherwise that we got. But I digress though.
Yes.
Yeah. So this guy saying, yeah, you could tell though, like that this guy hadn't done a lot of movies, but he definitely did music videos because it's shot like a lot of music videos.
Yeah, and so we cut from that back to the first flashback, which Jones already described to a T.
Yeah.
He gets stabbed by the Kurgan. They think he's dead. He comes back. They think he's practicing witchcraft, so they exile him to the Highlands, where he becomes a Highlander. I don't know if it's just me. The way Christopher Lambert looks, like when he's the Highlander in present time, like when he's like a little grizzled,
Yeah.
and a little scruffy looking,
Little thinner.
like he looks like he could be like a Highlander, but his face is so punchable in the flashbacks, and like when he's running on the beach with Sean Connery and
That
he's
pointless
smiling,
ass scene
His
which makes
Rocky
no sense.
montage.
like I just want to punch him in the face. Like he just looks so odd.
So first of all, they absolutely shot that in the same spot they shot
absolutely
Rocky
fucking
3
did that.
and Apollo Creed. It's the same spot. Where did they get to California?
I absolutely wanted to see fucking them just like cross paths, just like going in opposite directions, and just Sean Connery just knocks Apollo Creed down, just
For
you
sure.
know,
I
for,
want to
for
take
no
a second
fucking reason.
to ask you guys what you thought of that scene, because that's one of the few scenes that really stood out that made no sense, and it didn't seem like it had a
How do you
point.
trade someone to be more immortal?
Well, not that. I meant the beach scene where he's like, feel the deer.
Oh yeah. Oh, I told my wife.
Like,
I'm
what
like,
is this?
This has nothing to do with any of the movie.
It was like
or
they
any
just-
of the other movies
it's
after.
bizarre.
No. Feel
But it's
the
so
elf.
strange.
See, I-
Sean Connery is like getting.
he
he's
was like-
definitely near orgasm.
He's got a chub.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, this is like Avatar shit. He's just one with the planet at that point. But you know, you guys had mentioned too that like the purpose of him becoming the Highland, like the there can be only one, the one at the end, is that you're connected to like every living thing. So is that the only time that they just horribly explain that they're still kind of somewhat connected to the living things on the planet? I don't really know, but that's the only thing I kind of took from that. But it was so fucking strange.
Maybe that in the zoo scene where he was like staring down the
lion.
Big cat.
His accent was so strange. I watched it 3 times. I still have no real idea what he says to the lion.
Listen, I had to put
I don't think he does either.
I'm not even kidding. I had to put the subtitles on because I couldn't focus on what the hell they were saying.
No.
The accent. The only thing that killed me about the accent sound, you said, I actually go the opposite way on you, Jeff, with this. I actually thought he was more, I actually could deal with him more as the Highlander in the 1500s than I could with him in 1985, 1986 New York. Because his fucking 5 o'clock shadow just changed every single scene. And I couldn't fucking stand it.
No, and you can tell, he actually, I don't know what order they shot the scenes in.
No idea.
He gets so skinny as the movie like kind of goes in and out. It's weird. Like you tell, like I don't know if he just wasn't eating right or he got sick from being in New York and only filming at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
But in L.A., which they said was New York, but it's clearly L.A.
Oh, it's clearly
always wet as shit too.
Yeah.
It's
Right,
always
which was
just
covered in
raining.
previous things.
Yeah.
No, but he just gets so scary, so scary skinny at certain points. I have to go with Jeff on this, but this is the point whenever we get, and I know we're jumping ahead, but we don't have to get to the minutia. When he's the Highlander, and you're first meeting Sean Connery, my wife looks at me and says, "Does he have a learning disability?" Oh, God. And I went, "Who? Sean Connery?" She went, "No, the Highlander." And I went, and he looked at, and then like go back and watch the expressions whenever Sean Connery is talking, and they get to the cutaways where he's talking. He's like, "Hey," it's not like full mental illness, but like you can tell, like he's like, "Oh," like that pretty blonde girl that's with him. She's like, "Aren't you nice? And what's your name?" Connor. Good for you, Connor. I have a castle. I bet you do. That's nice. Because he's either like learning disability in 1500s or he's learning disability in that small Baroque scene, which I want to talk about so bad when we get there. And then he's like full on like how every guy in the 80s pictured themselves as like they think they're cool and kind of forceful and sly, but they really come off as like varying degrees of rapey in the 80s.
Yes. There is definitely a Miami Vice vibe with how Connor looked in the modern day for the film. Going back to the Highlander, the first flashback, right? I do want to go ahead and just throw some props to James Cosmos being in there, who is Angus in Braveheart.
Yes, the dad.
Yeah. Because
the only Scottish person playing a Scotsman in the movie.
Yeah. I like him as an actor. I had completely forgot he was in this movie, and when I saw him, I had to pause it and just go, fucking nice little Braveheart tie in there,
too. Way to go there, yeah.
You know, it's nice that when you got to get a guy with a Scottish brogue to fucking slaughter people in a field, you know, we're being consistent. He's your go-to.
He's your guy. It's like, is he available?
Yeah. Exactly.
Such a badass in Braveheart that it carries over to movies.
He gets his fucking hand chopped with an axe and just stabs the
guy.
Dude.
And then he's screaming at Brendan Gleeson, "Don't be a pussy!" And then, so good. That movie's so bad in so many ways, but so good for those scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get to the point where, so he's back and forth, and it's brave. It is very brave to have it tell it in such a back and forth way for the first act of the movie. Yeah. Where he was, who he came from. It's jarring, but I think it's only because the technology of the time didn't allow for such smooth transitions as we would have if they shot it today.
They should have just done the fucking Star Wars and just did like the fucking map wipes and like the cross fades.
Oh yeah,
and
the star fades
and like bar transitions and everything. I would have bought that more. I actually made a note here because of that first fight scene when Kragan's going for Connor. Kurgan, is going for Connor on the field. And I was like, that fight scene between the two of them in the field made Darth Vader Obi-Wan 1 look like fucking Phantom Menace today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just couldnn't believe. This is the second time I'm saying it. I'm going to attack you, and I'm going to put my sword in the air, and the dude just goes under, poke.
Yeah.
I'm dead! It's like, how did you even fucking survive this long?
You know, this all
How bad of a fucking swordsman are you?
If he does, now am going to run the risk of sounding insensitive. And I'm about to say, and then Jones is giving me that face like, well, then don't fucking say it.
I've learned in life, if you feel like this might be racist, but...
If you got to tell us that you're going to do that, you
this
probably
might be
shouldn't.
It's definitely not racist, but...
Hold on, we haven't gotten to the racist, sexist stuff in this movie yet.
Oh, no.
We will.
It's getting there. And
we will.
It's like Act 1's over. All right, double down on that shit.
It's 80s, remember.
Yeah, say whatever you want to her. She's not a full person. She's only 83% of a person. No, but the idea here is that if he does have a learning disability in the 1500s, then like the fact that like everyone's like they're marching to war, they're like, "Hey, Connor, you ready to go to battle?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then he gets to the battle, and he's like, "Why is no one fighting me?" Like, no. Just fight around and make you feel like he's a part of it. And then he's like, I'm gonna attack. And then he gets stabbed, so it all plays out like that. It all starts to make a lot of sense.
Which kind of leads me to something because we've been kind of circling the first 25 minutes of this movie, but
as we do.
I find it really interesting. I wrote down like how did Kurgan know? I mean, I knew he obviously knew, but how did he know specifically the name? And
It was that guy.
It was such a strange leave him alone. He's for me. Like, you gotta be the guy to kill him.
Like, yeah, you Google searched him in 1500.
Like, did you?
Yeah.
Well, so I'm convinced. So as Jeff had mentioned, the writer of the movie wrote this movie in what you say grad school, and the teacher's like, "Oh, you should sell this." I think that dude wrote this at 11 o'clock the night before the final was due and didn't give it a second rewrite, and the teacher never edited it and just sent it off. And I don't think anybody read this script the second time.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, doing a little research, the original script was drastically different than what we got. Kurgan was a sympathetic villain. He'd lost so much for so long because he was, really old.
So it's Thanos.
Yes. That he basically, the only thing that drove him to get up in the morning was to get to the gathering. That was it. Nothing more.
That'd have been awesome.
And way better, but instead they're like, let's make the guy from Shawshank Redemption into a rapist. And, that's good enough. Cut, print. Yeah. But he does so good in this movie, though. Like, Clancy Brown, despite the fact that they could have given him more to do, is still, this... If that trench coat wasn't in that movie, that Christopher Lambert just decides to just barely wear, it's like a robe, he would be Kurgan is the most memorable part of this entire movie, and how over the top he is.
Well, I love how they also gave them two of the greatest the 80s stereotypes for the characters that you could have, because, Connor is fucking Miami Vice, and then Kurgan is just full on fucking 80s biker punk, monster guy, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With more like an entire cattle herd of leather on him.
He's what you see when you walk into the bar that Pee-wee goes into when he gets dropped off by Large Marge.
So good. So terrible. Yeah, we should definitely do a Pee-wee movie.
Oh, for sure.
That sounds like nightmare fuel. Watch that at 1:30 in the morning after day drinking. That sounds like a great dream.
Sounds interesting.
We were circling the drain. Let's pick it up a little bit, right? To after the fight scene, some nice forensics lady discovers who randomly working forensics in NYPD. She's also an ancient weapons expert.
Of course she is.
How fucking convenient for that.
Very convenient.
Here's the thing, though, and I don't pretend to know a lot about weapons. All right, I don't know. I just buy scorpion-shaped blades and hand them to my friends, essentially. But even I know that a folded katana blade, folded enough times, does not splinter. It simply shatters if it breaks. If it cracks, it breaks. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You ain't finding shards of that pillar in that pillar for her to find. You aren't finding a pillar if you're swinging that thing fast enough, hard enough. So, yeah, but we meet her, and she eventually, spoiler alert, her nipples shall be chewed upon in this film.
In the 80s sex scenes were something. They were like a little art form all their own.
We were getting into the renaissance of cinematic sex scenes. That's you start ramping up through the 80s into the early 90s when Michael Douglas just fucked everything on camera.
He did. Yeah. He literally did.
The camera.
He did. Yeah.
Sometimes Catherine Zeta-Jones to this day still dresses up like a camera just to make sure, just to get him there again.
Make sure it still works.
No, yeah, I would think we should. Oh my god, I'm gonna put it in there because it's a terrible episode idea, but I'm gonna put it in there. We should do top 5 movie sex scenes. Oh, absolutely should do that. 100%. And 4 of the 5 are going to be Jean-Claude Van Damme movies from 87 to 91. Like, every single one. We absolutely should. We had Choose on the Nipples.
I like how you at least 7 times have mentioned chewing on nipples.
Well, it's like a sexy silhouette scene.
Yeah,
and
so
then
that's
like
chewing.
And then it's like the one. It's for a moment you get this oasis. Like it's like going through a storm and the clouds separate, and there's a boob finally in his movie, and then he starts fucking gnawing on it.
Well, because you get to the point too when you're watching this, you're like, "Am I going to see anything?" Because it's shot really well.
Yeah,
it's a nice silhouette. They've got some good lighting going on there. They're using the shadows well, and you're like, "Are they going to fucking tease me with this?" Like, am I just? There's some butt. All right,
there's always butt.
There's Lambier butt.
There's Lambier butt.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, fucking nipple. He's going right. Like, yeah, you know.
And then he's right. Right in there.
Speaking of sex scenes, Kurgan gets candy.
Candy.
Right? And so I don't remember what the guy said. The tenant guy said. He said that Candy said you were a little rougher. You were kinky.
Yeah, I said you were kinky.
And I'm thinking to myself, butt play.
Yeah.
He's like, don't you ever talk to me again.
We've been friends for 20 years. You've never looked me in the eye and said, butt play.
It was so casual.
Well, I remember like the scene happened and I'm like, is he going to elaborate? Well, apparently saying that was enough to piss Kurgan off, so obviously Candy had like, little details there. And no, listen, Kurgan's into that stuff. He's probably the cut play too.
I thought it was Kurgan getting pegged by Candy.
See,
there you go.
We have to be aware that we're in the mid-'80s at this point, so butt play is taboo. Much less like so today, you go on a date and you meet somebody. It's like, oh, do you eat ass? I also eat ass. What are you doing? It's Denny's at 3 p.m. Let's go eat ass.
It's a whole different Moons Over by Ham.
It is. Talk about a grand slam.
See, I looked at it more that it was probably the hilt of the sword. That he constructed it and she just kind of used that to just go to town.
I mean, either way, it was one direction. And Kurgan was down with it.
I was so thrown off by the fucking herpes on the dude's mouth.
Oh my god!
Oh yeah,
dude, I love that entire little set with the guy on the couch. He's heckling people. I'm like there's so much flavor here.
Somebody put a lot of work to building the world of this skeevy motel.
The world building went to that and that alone. Why are there immortals? We don't know. Fuck off. But you know what? We're gonna get herpes on that guy's face.
Yeah.
I also like that Kurgan pulls out a wad of fucking 20s and gets the room for $20.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'll send candy up to you.
Let me know if there's anything you need. Like that's it. That's a negotiation. Of course, a man that big, you're not gonna haggle with him.
Especially with a fucking neck scar that goes over like 270 degrees of your neck.
Yes.
Like that was the thing that they took most from that sequence when he checks into the hotel is just like the fucking scar.
Yeah.
Like when you see a dude with that scar, how do you? I mean, he's a scary guy, but how do you not ask?
And not just that, he wears that low cut vest to show it off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So close, so far with Ramirez and that sequence. Let's jump ahead a little bit to hit. We go back and forth. And Nash is Connor McLeod, and he's living out there with may or may not have a disability, out into the middle of nowhere in a castle with, I would say, probably the prettiest girl in this movie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She just looks
with
like
the
easily
most Scottish name, Heather.
Honestly, it was a tie between Heather and Rachel.
Yeah.
Because Brenda couldn't hold a candle to those two.
No, Brenda reminded me too much of somebody I know, but I don't know who it was. But I was like,
that's not a good thing.
I was like, and then he's like going to Old Country Buffet, like right on his nips, and just can't get over it. He's like,
it's like the 10th time now.
It's not going to stop.
It's not.
How many times is no going to mention chewing on nipples?
Is that what fuels this?
He was going to chew Scottish name Heather though. Yeah,
he was going to chew at her nipples when they were in the fucking field fucking until like Sean Connery's horse.
Oh my god!
Until his horse's dick knocks him off of her because he just like you're going to get somebody's attention by just jumping the horse directly over top of them while they're
fucking.
Scare the
shit out of you.
I just keep thinking that chomping on nips is like his finish. Like, he's got to get his shit in. That's what he's working for.
That's how he does it.
That's like his one move. Oh my god! Wait a minute. This works for the disability thing. It's like he's like 14-year-old Highlander, and he's like, so you see that pretty girl over there, corner? He's like, yeah. It's like when you get a pretty girl alone, you have to get it down to just nothing on top, and then you know what they love if you just start gnawing on her titties. Oh yeah, it's like that's the best thing in the world. She'll love it, and he's always going for it. But yeah, when you meet Sean Connery, the only heavy Scottish accent in this movie
should not have.
Not being Scottish.
He's fancy as fuck in this movie.
There is so much cultural inappropriation throughout this movie.
So much.
There's a lot happening.
Man.
I thought Ramirez, like I said earlier in the episode, I thought Ramirez was really cool, and I would love to watch an entire movie or TV show based around his adventures and the
Yeah,
shenanigans.
his character is far more interesting than anybody else.
Well, so first off, you're dropping Sean Connery into this.
That's the whole budget of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's pretty much like the only real actor in this movie. So for the 20 minutes he's in it,
he elevates it. Every scene.
Yeah.
He carries what is basically the only bit of plot throughout the movie that we get.
Yep.
So
all exposition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I often wonder, did he read the script before he signed on to do this?
Oh, no.
Did a studio have an option on him and said, this is what we're using it on?
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. Somebody owed somebody money, and the way they paid it off was having Sean Connery be in this fucking thing.
Like, what pictures did they have of Sean Connery at some sort of, like, nightclub in 1984 that they gave him that fucking jumpsuit to wear and said, you're going to be immortalized on camera for all time in this 007.
Also, your name is Juan.
Yeah.
Ramirez. Who's actually Egyptian. Now I want to
With
see,
a fucking samurai sword.
It's like 2,000 years old.
There's the whole thing.
He's like half of Noah's Ark.
There's so much backstory that someone just like randomly pulled it out of their ass. He's from ancient Egypt. He's a metallurgist. That's like that goes in there. Yeah, like he's a metallurgist. Like what? Like how do you get a degree in 1500s to be appointed by the King of Spain? And why did he let you go to Scotland? And how did you know where to find Connor McLeod? Like, how does anyone know? Okay, I'm not even going to bring up the disability thing again.
God damn it.
Because I just imagine him, when he goes to town for supplies, he's like, hi, I'm Connor. If you want to see me, big castle on the hill, just come say hi. Good to see you. Totally hiding out, though, so be chill.
So, with these flashbacks, I think drives, like, probably the most... like the heaviest plot point in the entire film is just his relationship with Heather, her aging, and that's just a little sad. You're like, oh, that's because you know it's coming, and Ramirez tries to warn him. He's like, fuck that noise, man. I'm in love, and watching him live with her and age and pass on. When I was young, I mean, the scene was what it was. I'm like, oh, that's a bummer for him. As a married man now, like. It like a little slightly frames it differently for me, and it's like that's kind of fucking sad actually to like just bury your wife who you've watched age and die in your arms. Like that was
and you're exactly the same.
And you're just the same dude, and you gotta fuck. I wouldn't do that again.
That's a curse. Yeah, that's a curse.
A big fucking curse.
But in all due fairness, like like Ramirez tries to warn him, he's just trying to help him out. But you got to experience it before you realize not to do it again. And that's why he just chooses to be kind of rapey instead of like committed to.
You want to talk about rapey? Let's talk about fucking rapey. I'll tell you about fucking rapey.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that weird ass fucking scene?
You've got notes about him being rapey too?
It comes up.
I mean, I feel like everybody probably does. In that fucking bar.
Yep.
That's it. That's
He
it right
says to her, hold on, how can I do this?
there. Please do it.
Pick an accent. Any
I'm
accent.
fucking trying.
Spin the fucking wheel, guys.
I'd like to walk you home, Brenda. I thought it was more Scottish than he was.
And then he was.
It was.
So yes, but you have to go back. He's like, he comes in, she's freaking out because she's like, obviously she's the smartest person, her character in this whole movie, right? The smartest person, and she's freaking about the implication that there is like, and not even the fact that she knows that he's immortal yet. That's later in the movie. She puts that together. Her whole life is swords, that's a weird life for someone to have. But she's like putting out like everything I've ever known about Japanese swords is off by like 1,500 years, which apparently is enough to get you down. And then this guy comes in, and he's like, have you been to the garden lately? And she's like,
And the fucking
what'd you
wrestling
say?
the wrestling is still on the TV.
Yeah.
In the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she gets up in his face. Like, she's not shy. She's like, what the fuck did you say? And he's like, I said, have you been to the garden lately? She's like, have you been following me? And he does not deny it. He's like, oh yeah, I've been following you. Can I walk you home?
We teach our daughters to fucking mace people for shit like that.
Oh my god, yeah.
Like, holy shit.
I did not realize that this is going to have to be when my daughter gets old enough. I'm like, all right, sit down. Lesson time. Watch this 10 minutes of the Highlander. Here's what not to do. Sit with your back turned to an entire bar. Engage with the rapey guy at the bar. Then let him continue to speak. And then you choose to fucking follow him. It's a series of bad decisions that ultimately culminate with getting your titty chewed up.
And there's not a lot of time that passes between I'm gonna probably stalk you and maybe rape you to I'm chewing on your titties.
Yes.
That's like 48 hours. That is a weird length of time to be completely open and honest with, like, fucking somebody because of a sword.
The thing that seals the deal for her is stabbing it.
Yeah.
She's like, and he's like, you see? And she's like, chew on it.
My note that I had on that note is that you stab me, now I'm gonna stab you.
Oh, man.
But
With the dick.
It was with his penis. It was his own claymore.
I can't believe she went for it. It's
The motive. But the whole thing about this movie to me that drove me crazy with the story and the plot and everything was just the motivation of things just didn't like make any sense. There was like almost no motivation for anything to happen. There's no motivation for a woman who's got a background in like fucking working with swords to put that on a resume and get a job as a forensic scientist for a police department. Like, I just don't see how that like translates. If she like her cover story of her working for the museum would have made much more fucking sense. Like, hey, we found these fragments. Can you take a look at them because you're this person who works at a museum?
yeah.
And like, let us know what you find. Would have made so much more sense than just shoehorning her into the police department where the cops are horrible people.
Oh my god.
Oh, they're terrible cops.
terrible.
And I want to cover the cops and specifically how that police department looks in a second. But I need you to repeat that word you said twice in a row. Where does she say she works at?
The museum.
You're like, museum.
Shazam, museum.
Like, I'm sorry, but could you say it 3 times in a row for me?
Museum. Museum. Museum.
I didn't know I fucking needed that in my life.
Okay.
You can tell where Noah and I have never gone together.
Apparently.
I would love to go on a nice afternoon date to the museum.
What's this code of the museum?
To the museum.
Museum.
Anyway, the police precinct, highest ceilings I've ever seen in a fucking building in my entire life. It's like they had the same set and they just decorated it and they're like, I don't know, fucking throw a microscope in the middle of this room with a computer. It's a forensics lab.
Right.
Fucking amazing.
And all those cops, I mean, even like in the beginning when like you're introduced, the first thing you hear is, God damn it, Frank. And it's like, that's so fucking 80s, it's ridiculous. And at almost every single one of those cops is like their last fucking day before retirement.
Yep.
Pretty fucking
Except for the one beat cop who's like, are you sure you weren't down there just to blow him? And the deal went south?
Jesus
Oh, yeah.
Christ.
No,
There's
that's
some weird homophobia floating around
Let's
this
get
movie.
into the it didn't age well part of the 80s movie here. Gentlemen, we start with homophobia.
Yeah, it's in there.
And our baby face seems to handle it well. And I'm like, okay. Like, he takes it right on the chin. No pun intended.
Oh, hell.
And then the cop doubles down on being homophobic. And then, of course, our masculine 80s action hero has to get upset about it. And then he beats all but one cop up, in which everyone else in the police station was apparently watching this interrogation happen,
Yeah,
and then
they just
fucking
let him
marks
go.
out for it.
Well, because I think the cops, the one who was, in my opinion, projecting his fucking...
yeah.
There's no way he fucking wasn't.
No.
I think it was Officer Garfield, I think is his name. He's a piece of shit, obviously.
He is a way big piece of shit.
And that whole scene was so... I remember being a kid watching it going... Not that it was uncomfortable, like, it was just like, it's such an odd... Again, it's just a
Unnecessary.
weird... It didn't need to happen. And even more so now you look back and go, that serves zero purpose for a cop who's not in the movie the rest of the time. Really.
Nope, that's his last scene.
Yeah, get punked out by Christopher Lambert.
Lambier.
Fuck, Lambert.
Well, there's sexual harassment at the beginning of the movie when she shows up in the crime scene.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where they just lay
You
that
look
on
real
her.
good, Brenda.
Like,
How you
holy
doing?
shit.
Yeah. And then you've got the homophobic stuff. Not to mention that fucking Connor punches 17 cops
Doesn't
right
get
in the
shot.
face.
Yeah.
Doesn't get shot. Doesn't go to jail.
Doesn't
Doesn't
get
get any charges like pressed against him.
Nope.
You know, none of that. And then later on, there's the one line that I had to write down where like after they brought Sean Connery in, they flash back to today. They're in the police station, and the guy's like, some Vietnamese neighbor ate his dog, or like said some fucking
And
line
there's
like
your
that.
racism.
Jesus and I'm like, there's cultural inappropriation number 3 going on here. And I was like, and my thing here is this, well, it was the 80s after all.
Jesus.
They just didn't fucking care.
Decade we were born.
The
Wow.
goddamn 80s and the masterful wonderfulness that's also just like every chance he gets, he's misogynistic to every single woman in this movie. It's like, oh, god damn it, woman, I told you to get back in the house. And then he's like, I saved your life as a kid. Which, by the way, we have to talk about the Nazi thing. Okay. So that's actually, to me, like the most intriguing part of the movie.
Fascinating.
The idea of maybe the Highlander being around in, the World War II. Like, okay, so if you're going to remake it, like, flesh that shit out, right? And the fact that, and put him there in the Holocaust or something like that and tell some good stories. When they shoot it in the back, did anyone else see the squib go off and, like, look like the little girl got shot?
Yeah.
It bothered the hell out of me, and then she no-sells it. She's like, hi, why are you alive? He's like, magic powers. Reasons. Fucking reasons. So, yes, we get misogyny, we get racism, and homophobia in this movie.
Yeah, casually.
Super casual. All of it.
Just rolls right off the tongue, you know?
Yeah. So let's get to the meat and potatoes here, though. The sword fighting.
Yeah.
The idea. For all the problems we're picking about this movie, it's a movie where fucking immortal people cut each other's head off with swords. That's what you're fucking here for, and the last fight gives it to us.
Oh my goodness.
It does.
It delivers.
Every other fight is like, it's all right. Castigar and Kurgan it was what it was. It served. We had to. I don't know if you guys caught this, and I got a kick out of it. Like the dude who
The 80s action dude?
You mean like not Frank Castle, but Frank Castle,
the military guy.
As in how most of the conservative people on your Facebook see themselves.
Yes,
right?
yes.
They see
That's
themselves as
100%
that
what I was
fucking-
thinking.
Yes.
God.
Like, how many people that I drove by their house today that have a Let's Go Brandon sign in their front yard picture themselves fantasizing to be that fucking guy?
And that's 100% what I'm thinking. Watching this movie, going, this is like at least 16 different people I know.
Yes.
This is how they view themselves. That's the guy who stormed DC.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes. He's a shaman in QAnon.
Not to be that guy.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck.
Oh, fuck you guys. Yeah, if that was the thing that we're saying, I'm like, fuck you. Get out of here. Go. I give a shit.
But yeah, all the other fights
Get
were
vaccinated.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, please do. All the fights were like, they were what they were, but man, the final fight. Even though it started sloppy on the rooftop, the money shots when they fall through the window and they fucking... I can tell you right now...
Just go wide with it, yeah.
I eventually owned that movie on VHS. I eventually got it when I was able to get VCR in my room. And that's probably the scene I watched the most. I would just watch it again. I would rewind it and watch it again because it was just so well done, and the music was so good.
The only
the audio's
critique,
great.
the only critique that I had was when they went through the glass. I was kind of hoping some of the water was going to like kind of waterfall down too while that was happening. But I mean, that is a minor critique because I mean, it was technically the best fight scene they put together.
Easy.
And it was fucking shot beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
That whole silhouette thing that they did again, too, with the backlighting and everything to have them fight like that, I just thought added so much to that scene.
Well, it's to the point where, like, even the Highlander TV series, which I remember nothing except for the intro of the Highlander TV series, probably because it was on USA Network and played all the time with Raw and stuff, was basically they just reshot the ending of Highlander with the big windows and the silhouette. So it's fucking killer. Like, and they had to get the front of that fight scene has to be weird because they still had some random Sparks budget to spend on random lighting.
Right. How is the water not electrified when the water tower fell over and they're standing up to their knees in water and all the electricity is falling from the sign into the water. Like, they're not getting electrocuted. She's not getting electrocuted. They're like, we'll fall through the skylights, but zero water is going to come with us.
Listen, they ran out of budget.
It's just bizarre.
They ran out of money, but they spent well. Damn it, on tasteful nudity.
So the fight scene ends, and this is the thing I'm going to bring up, because even as a child, even as a preteen watching this movie,
this fuck with you?
This is the thing that like stayed with me.
Yeah.
It made zero fucking sense, right? So Connor takes dude's head, badass fight. It was really cool. Everything was composed well. His head lops off.
Kurgan knew he was done for too.
That's the best part.
I didn't pick that up until this viewing that Kurgan knew he was done, and he was actually happy about it.
Yeah,
He was like,
Well, did you see too? Like his eyes changed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like that's the
They
thing that I
turned
did.
black.
They turned black. Like it was over. You know, and he was ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Nice
funny. I
touch.
never noticed it until this last viewing as a grown ass man with 15, 20 years of life experiences to realize that dude's accepted his death.
Yeah.
That's all that says about me. But what stayed with me then and still does, and it still makes no sense to me. He takes his head, the body's still kind of moving and posing, which is okay, fine.
Gets ready for another action shot again.
But then, like, as the quickening is happening, the most quickening of quickenings is happening.
The quickest inning.
The quickest of
Now they have
quickenings.
medications that they can sell today that can make the quickening a little bit not so quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were like,
Cialis.
what the fuck were those demons? What the fuck were those? Like, chomping at his body and, like, swirling around. They didn't look friendly to me.
As all the Highlanders that have ever existed before, because I think just what you canonically explained to yourself in the beginning of the fucking action sequence, just as the Freebirds were getting their heat, by the way, that he gets up and leaves, that he could feel the backflipping limo guy.
Yeah.
I kind of looked at it as the reason why the Kurgan was left standing, and you see the silhouette of a head around him, is because there was so much power in the Kurgan, who's basically killed 70% of all Highlanders that ever exist. Is that's like the souls of what we would know. Spoiler: the aliens that they are.
Yeah. Look, I'm not calling the question that. It's everything after that. It's the weird fucking demonic
That's what I'm saying.
creatures.
Yeah.
What, like, okay, so that tells me, if we view this movie in a vacuum and there was never a sequel after this, then his girlfriend in 1536 Scotland was right.
Yeah.
And that shit was fucking demonic and devil Lucifer or something, because what I saw interacting with him didn't look friendly.
Yeah, it didn't look like good things were going to happen there.
No, it looked like in Ghostbusters when they let all the ghosts out of the containment unit.
It was weird as shit. It's still weird.
It looked to me like they got the guy who drew the Dark Crystal. All the effects on Dark Crystal to do that one scene. Like,
I was going to say Fievel Goes West.
It is very, very kind of a like
There's an American Tail thing going on there.
Yeah, for sure. But then the thing that fucked with me was not that. I'm sorry. Is the dialogue he yells, "I hear everything.
I am everything.
I feel everything." Like, listen, we've all experimented with certain things in our lives, and sometimes you can turn. There are certain things you can take that I do not recommend to turn every part of your body into the tip of your penis. And so when you use that to cut off the Kurgan's head, you can feel everything, and it does happen quite quick. But I always like, what does he mean? Like, what does he mean? And then he uses this to take a leisurely drive back to Scotland, where he's going to grow up.
I think what we're missing here is that's actually a tie back to when Candy was in his room, because when she was penetrating his asshole with the hilt of the sword, he was saying the same thing. I can feel everything. Yeah. I can hear everything.
Well, I assume that I hear everything, feel everything is he can read men's thoughts.
That's the prize.
It's the prize, yeah. But it's always, but like, that's a weird way to say it in the middle of of the biggest orgasm in history.
Charles Xavier never fucking did that in Cerebro.
No. No, he didn't.
He marched that shit back.
Do we think prior to the limo driver that Connor had killed any other?
That's what I was wondering. Yeah, because he doesn't seem to have a lot of.
Because he doesn't seem prepared for what happens in either case.
Can you imagine Kurgan winning that fight and then like he's expecting the ultimate prize, and because Connor's only killed one guy, it's like like a little squirt at the beginning.
But he can do backflips.
That's it. Yeah. No, you just actually kind of going back to what you said with Professor X. How many times do you think Professor X masturbated in Cerebro?
In Cerebro?
Well, he had it on.
Oh. Honestly?
Yeah.
I mean,
First of all,
he can see everything.
He may not even have feeling down there, but he can make himself probably go pretty good by that. Then he
doesn't even have to use his hands.
Well, so
no, he doesn't. Man.
Now I'm
like a stranger. Does it feel like a stranger, or does it feel extra personal?
You got to understand that with him being connected to every known person on the planet with Cerebro, his stranger can actually be him masturbating somebody else off while he's connected to it.
There's a lot of sexual
he could have found you, Noah, when you're like 21 years old, like in the middle of a 7-hour shift at Toys R Us where you just had to go to the back room for no fucking reason. Yeah. And then you just lose all control and you just like wake up and your pants are down. And you have no fucking clue what happened. But you feel oddly relaxed.
Could you imagine trying to explain that in a human resources write-up? So I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like a guy in a wheelchair was having sex with me from very far away. Next time my wife gets mad at me, I'm going to use that as an excuse. Honey, why was the trash taken out? Have you ever felt the sensation that Patrick Stewart was having sex with you?
So that would be the next question. If it was going to be Charles Xavier having sex with you, would you want it to be Patrick Stewart or James McAvoy?
Oh, that's a different question. You know what? That could be a whole topic. Tune in next week as we discuss who's the most fuckable Professor X. Or is it the animated cartoon?
I was going to say, at that point,
I feel like he'd be in like mid-final stroke just before, you're about to go full X-Men Gold Team on you, and then he stops, and you're like, what's wrong? And he said, my watch. It's been magnetized.
Listen, if you don't get that joke, you need to get out more.
Get the fuck get out there. So the Highlander, though, what do you think, Jeff? What do you think the lasting cultural impact of the Highlander is?
It led to a lot of people chewing on a lot of nipples. I'll tell you that. No, I think it's definitely a cult classic. It was not really considered a commercial success when it came out. I think it cost $19 million to make, and it made 12 or 13,
something like that.
So they lost money on it for sure. But I think it's one of those movies that guys like us 10 years after the fact are ranting and raving about it, and now 20 years later are having a podcast about it.
36 years later. 20 years.
It's a long time. But yeah, I think there's definitely a place for it, and it spun a lot of things from it. There were a number of films. There was a number of TV shows, both animated and not.
Wait a minute. There was a Highlander, the animated series.
You didn't know that?
Yeah.
Get the fuck out.
There's an animated movie and an animated series.
There's an anime. Yeah. And then there is like a kid's cartoon.
He doesn't know what to do. I've never seen
this shit up. Because let me tell you something.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead
anime is not terrible, but the kid's cartoon is shit.
So it's not just it's like the 90s animated cartoon style?
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Oh my god. I didn't know I fucking needed something in my life.
You didn't know that.
Highlander, the animated series?
Yeah.
How did I miss that shit? All right.
Dear listeners,
very lucky.
Noah is quickening right now.
I'm going to have multiple quickenings stacked on top of each other. But yeah.
I think, when I watched it recently compared to when I watched it years ago, I think my expectations were higher. And they definitely did not meet my expectations at this point in life, but it's still a fun movie. I mean, it's one of those things where it's so good it's bad, or it's so bad it's good. And depending on the day, it could be either of those.
Oh, guys.
So Noah's just learning and seeing what this bullshit show looks like. Man. It was not good. I watched this shit.
It's like Mortal Kombat, the animated series level of stuff.
It's probably the same damn company.
Which is so bad that it's incredible for all the wrong reasons. Like, oh my god. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to go down that dark web rabbit hole.
Noah is swiping on the pictures of this like he's on his fucking Tinder account.
There he is. You know what? I am kind of upset at myself that I met my wife just before the advent of app dating and all that stuff, because I could have so many more sexually transmitted diseases. just based off of this motion I'm doing right here. They made fucking toys for Highlander. Oh, I'm going to eBay. It's going to be a day. But Matt, what do you think? What do you think about the lasting legacy of the first Highlander movie is?
There can be only one. I mean,
look at you.
That quote.
That's it. Yeah.
Right there.
Good
I mean,
point.
and
Everybody knows it.
everybody knows that quote.
Yep.
My wife wasn't convinced that that's what this was from.
Yeah.
She's like, I've heard
That's
that.
amazing.
I've heard this before. It can't be from this movie. I'm like, it's from this
It
fucking
definitely
movie.
is.
So
Absolutely.
someone else supposed to use it. Yeah, if they did, they were stealing from this fucking movie.
There
Yeah.
could be only one.
My takeaway from this is that this movie, I know we've had sequels and they've had series and everything else, and I am not a fan of remakes. I've never been a fan of remakes. You know, if you're gonna do something that's very similar to something, just fucking tweak your own shit just enough so it's something slightly different.
The Lowlander.
But remake this. I think this concept with the right writer and the right director and the right cast, you can make this movie. Because again, we say sometimes it's so bad it's good, sometimes it's so good it's bad. And, you know, when the movie doesn't take itself seriously, that's when you can really enjoy it. Like fucking in the end of the movie when Kurgan kidnaps the fucking old lady out of the car and rips the lid off of it, and he's got the clothespins holding
In
his
his
neck
scar.
on for no fucking reason because they weren't there earlier.
No.
Right.
And he's just going like, yeah, it's too bad you would get on a camera on that one because that would be a YouTube channel. But it was so fucking outlandish, but it was great. You know, I think like the movie like kind of hits a stride there at that point. But you could take it now because it's such a beloved property. So many people do have, you know, knowledge of it and everything. And I think you can make something really fucking good if just by fleshing out the story a little bit more. That's my kind of takeaway from this is that fucking give me a Highlander 2025 movie.
See, I remember hearing when they remade Bloodsport, which I don't know if anyone remembers that they remade Bloodsport.
No.
They did.
Bloodsport never should have been remade.
Yeah. Batista's Tong Po.
Really?
Yeah. So, and that they were going to do Highlander. My only problem with them remaking Highlander is I don't want that movie set today. I don't want people with their camera phones out taking. I want this movie set in the 80s. It's got to be. Use the original soundtrack and that fucking trench coat. But you're right about Act 3 of this movie. Because Act 3 has the old lady, the old man getting tossed down, him with it's got the nipple chopping, and it's got that entire fight scene at the end. It's like it's so good. It's so good. Doc, the lasting cultural impact.
I want to just throw out there that, and I remember reading this, and Summit Entertainment announced that it had bought the film rights to Highlander in 2008. As of May 2020, the filming for the remake had not yet begun, but in 2021, May of 2021, it was revealed that Henry Cavill would be the titular character.
Superman.
But we don't know who the character would be. I'm sure it wouldn't be a McLeod, but... so we got something coming our way. When that happens, who knows? Might stay in developmental hell. May not even get off the ground. But we may yet get a new Highlander film. But I agree with Mac. I think it would be great to have like an actual remake because there's a lot of meat on the bone that was not fleshed out properly. But as far as... And I said earlier in the very beginning, this movie means a lot to me because it started my love of swords, blades, and just... I think it's just cool, man. Like, there's nothing cooler than, you know, a katana to me.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm with you on that.
You know, I mean, bullets are far more deadly, but they, you know, blades don't run out of bullets. They won't jam.
No,
you know. But I think the movie is spectacular in its ridiculousness, and that it is when it does, I think, take itself seriously often, sometimes to its detriment. But I kind of dig that it does. I said that to my wife. We're watching it, and she's just like, so like, I would say baffled at the ridiculousness of it, but she's just like, this isn't very good. And I'm like, well, it's Highlander. Like it's its
own thing.
It's like,
it literally is his own genre.
I said this is a movie about immortals cutting each other's heads off, fighting for power to take over the world. It's ridiculous sounding.
And here's the best part. This is the best Highlander movie.
Yeah, easily. Every other
this
one
movie isn't technically good, and they get way worse.
Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, this movie's in my guilty pleasure list of films. It is in the top five easily, and I'm happy actually that we got a chance to talk about it and relive it because it gave me an excuse to watch it again, and I will watch it again at some point before I'm before I'm 50, most likely.
Yeah, Jones, I want to echo that because, I mean, in the grand scheme of movie watching, there are a lot of things I would like to see and still need to watch and everything. Highlander would not have really been on that list, but this gave me an opportunity to go back and watch it again and appreciate it for what it is. And, enjoy the good and, scoff a little bit at the not so good, but I'm happy I had a chance to rewatch it. Yeah.
No, yeah, I want to echo what everyone said. First of all, you're right. This movie did make swords cool for kids. They grew up in an era where GI Joe was guns and everybody, and any of the really, with the exception of Snake Eyes, everyone that was good, had a sword.
I got an idea. Go ahead.
Yes. So that was super cool, and that was there can be only one is like the most quotable thing from this movie and almost any of those cheesy 80s action movies. But I want to say probably the most lasting impact of this movie is really what it taught me about myself and how much fucking just straight snacking on titties that I have not done yet. So, my wife watched this when they got to this. I hyped up 3 things about this movie to my wife before we started. I'm like, 1, it's the accents; they're completely all over the place, and it's shit, and you're gonna hate it. 2, there's a lot of titties in this movie, and it's awesome. And 3, swords. I was like right about 1.5 of this. But whenever like she stabs him and then he's she gets down and she's crying and then she's looking at him, puts his hand on his face and he looks up at her. He's like, "We fucking." And I was like, "Yes!"
That is the weirdest fucking foreplay ever.
Yeah.
My wife though probably got an idea. She's like, "If I just stab him,
That'll do.
worst case scenario, I gotta have sex with him after." I mean, best case scenario. Hey! No, but no. I looked at her. She looked at me. She's like shaking her head. I'm like, "There's a titty. There's one tit. You get like a part of Heather's tit earlier in the movie, like just like and then a
Just
horse
enough
dick that's
to-
right over
sorry.
top of the thing. But there was one standalone
just a
titty.
little peek,
So,
just
yeah.
enough.
Just enough. What were you gonna say?
So, we'd redo Highlander, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I haven't watched the other movies or anything, or if I did, I don't remember them very well.
You sweet child of summer.
I know. I you know what? I got something to look forward to.
Yes.
Right? In a manner of speaking. But when he burns the house down, when she dies, he leaves his fucking sword in the ground.
Yeah, in her grave.
Does anybody ever go in the other movies or anything and get that fucking sword?
He goes back to the Highlands in Highlander 3 and I think Highlander 4, but I don't think he gets that sword.
There's your fucking movie for your Highlander remake.
There it is.
Somebody comes across the fucking sword and like reawakens the Highlanders around the world, and they all have to start fucking coming at each other.
Oh, Dave, sweet, gentle, succulent Dave. How they explain bringing back more Highlanders is way fucking worse than that. I've decided right here and now, and I need to make a pledge, not to ourselves, but to you, dear, sweet, sexual listeners. We now have to do the rest of the Highlander movies. We have, and here's the thing, Highlander 2 is the most ridiculous thing that you've ever seen in like a premise of a movie. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say, it's not the worst Highlander movie. So we have a journey to take together. And speaking of journeys, we want to thank you for coming along on this journey with us, dear, sweet, sexual, consensual listener. And continue this journey because next week, guys, we got something fucking cool in a pump line. Jafar, why don't you tell everyone what's next week?
Yeah, next week we are covering one of the greatest and most influential console games of all time, GoldenEye 64. James Bond action.
Yes.
Easily considered one of the greatest Nintendo 64 games and on a lot of lists of greatest games of all time. So we're excited we got to spend some time playing it recently and looking forward to talking about it for sure.
Hell yeah. And we want to thank everybody. We got some cool stuff coming up down the pipeline. Oh, yeah. Please, if you get a chance, and if you think, speaking of pipeline, and you want to help either of our pipelines, any of our pipelines, grow, mature, come to fruition, then a great way to do that and show your support is to go to us on social media. Check it out. Normally, here's where I would put a shitty outro, but there'll be a new shitty outro after GoldenEye, right? So we just want to tell you, we got merch. Doc right now is wearing the Masters of the Universe. Speaking of shitty 80s things that we adore because they're still fucking awesome.
Yes.
Masters of the Universe is like peak iconic, and you can have a piece of that. And we're going to be adding new shit all the time. So, gentlemen, I had fun talking about Highlander.
It was an absolute blast.
That's awesome.
It's good. We actually kept it under 7 days, so it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a start.
Back in person.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's do next week in person.
I think we can do that.
And then
Sounds
we do-
good.
All right. We'll see everybody around out there.